everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. It's another no glasses day. Do not adjust your television sets or monitors. And we have a lot to talk about today, including the Odyssey. A lot of people went to see it on its first weekend, and they kept coming out on its second weekend. It had one of the best holds ever for a movie that opened to over $100 million. So we're going to cover all of that and all of the other box office news. So let's jump right into it and look at the top 10 for this past weekend. The Odyssey was number one again with an estimated number of $87 million. Yes, we are using the dreaded estimates because I'm on the road today to see Spider-Man, but that's pretty impressive. The drop is 29.6% based on those estimates, and we'll look at where that falls as far as other $100 million openers, and it's made $286.3 million through its first two weekends. There was a lot of speculation, perhaps a lot of wishing and hoping from some people that the Odyssey would have a huge fall off in weekend number two, but Christopher Nolan just knows how to turn people out to theaters, apparently, because this is a great result for any movie, much less one that is a 3-hour R-rated adaptation of an epic poem from Greece from thousands of years ago. Audiences really seem to be very excited about seeing this film in theaters. It's a big draw for premium formats. So nothing but a win for the Odyssey on its second weekend, and we'll see how it holds up against the big juggernaut opening this weekend, which is, of course, Spider-Man Brand New Day. Oh, by the way, this is Dan from the future because you can time travel on YouTube now. I think there may be something weird going on with the focus on my camera. I didn't notice it in my monitor until I'd shot about 80% of this video. I can see it in my peripheral vision right now. I literally don't change any of the settings on my camera ever, and yet sometimes it just decides to rebel against me and do things like that. So I apologize if the focus is slightly shifting throughout this video. I'm going to try to cover as much of it as I can with charts and other graphics. I don't know. My equipment hates me, but my apologies. I just didn't want to go back and reshoot like 80% of the video. In second place was Moana, a distant second place. It dropped 41.5% in its third weekend to bring in $10.5 million. It has broken the $100 million domestic barrier, and I'm going to look at the profitability of Moana, or perhaps lack thereof, later on in the show. In third place, a close third, was Toy Story 5. In its sixth weekend, it brought in $10 million. It's a 27.3% drop in its sixth weekend, and it's now approaching $450 million domestically. This was kind of surprising to me. Hadestown, the musical, which is a pro shot, or basically a professionally shot performance of the musical as it appeared on stage, comes in fourth place at $9.6 million. So that's a win for what some people might consider a specialty title entering the top five. Minions and Monsters dropped 29.4%. It's very close with Hadestown. The two of them might switch places once the real numbers come in. It made $9.6 million. It's now broken $150 million domestically. In sixth place, we have The Invite. I believe this is the third consecutive weekend that The Invite has placed sixth at the box office, which isn't too bad. It dropped 25.4% to bring in another $2.6 million. Its domestic total now at $19.8 million. Evil Dead Burn dropped 44.9%, also bringing in $2.6 million. It's getting close to $30 million domestically. I'd say a disappointment for the film, not necessarily in relation to budget, but because this has been a great summer for horror, and of course we already have another Evil Dead movie on the way. Young Washington dropped to eighth place with $1.9 million. It's made close to $45 million domestically. The Alan Ritchson film Motor City debuts at number 9 with $1.6 million and spending an 11th week in the top 10, and that is a notable number that we'll talk about in a minute, is Obsession, which made $1.5 million and is now over $260 million domestically. Dropping out of the top 10 this past weekend, we had Disclosure Day, which is out after 6 weeks, and Supergirl, which exits the top 10 after just 4 weeks. And a big reason why may be that Supergirl, for the second consecutive weekend, led all releases as far as theaters lost. It lost 670 theaters, which puts it out of what I define as wide release, which is 1,000 theaters. It's still in 900 theaters. Evil Dead Burn lost 619 theaters. It's still in 2,385. Disclosure Day lost 377 theaters. It's still in 922, but it is also out of wide release. Gail Daughtry and the Celebrity Sex Pass lost almost all of its remaining theaters, 332 of them. It's now in just 25. And Obsession lost 321 theaters, although it's still in 1,203. These numbers will probably be pretty big next week because I know that theaters are going to be dumping a lot of movies to make room for multiple showings per day of Spider-Man. This is what the box office this weekend looked like in relation to the same weekend last year. We were down about 23.7% versus where we were in 2025. Now, the reason for that is that Fantastic Four, The First Steps, opened a year ago this past weekend. That's why we have the drop, even though the Odyssey performed very well. So we saw a drop for this past weekend compared to the same weekend last year, but I think we are in line for a big increase this upcoming weekend, because looking at the box office totals, Spider-Man Brand New Day may well double or come close to doubling the total for all movies at the box office a year ago. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that. This is what the summer box office chart looks like, and the Odyssey jumped 5 spots. It is now the second highest grossing movie of the summer at $286.3 million, of course, behind Toy Story 5, which is at $429.8 million. Obsession moves down 1 spot, as does The Devil Wears Prada 2. Backrooms is down 1 spot, along with The Mandalorian and Grogu and Minions and Monsters. The bottom 3 remain the same: Disclosure Day, Scary Movie, and Moana, but something is going to get displaced by Spider-Man Brand New Day. No matter what movie it is going to be one of the movies that I picked to be one of the top 10 films of the year. These were my predictions versus the actual results so far. Supergirl, which I picked at number 8, has already been eliminated, but it looks like my pick of Moana at number 3 is going to be my big bust pick of the summer. If you've kept track of my summer movie picks over the years, you know that The Rock has tanked them on more than one occasion, and this looks like the biggest blunder of them all, because I don't even know if Moana is going to be a top 10 summer movie. If it is, it's going to be there at number 10, and I think at best. But looking now as the summer really begins to take shape, I think the headlines are going to be that I underestimated the Odyssey, that I heavily overestimated Moana, and I didn't even see Backrooms and Obsession coming. Backrooms is on me. Obsession, though, I mean, nobody saw that coming. All right, let's take on some of the movies in the top 10, and we'll start with the Odyssey. As I mentioned, it had one of the best holds in its second weekend ever for a movie that opens to over $100 million. And it is a pretty close competition as far as what the number one record holder will be. Right now, Wicked holds the record for the best weekend to hold for an opener of its size, losing just 27.9% of its business. Being around the holidays certainly helped. Then Top Gun Maverick comes in second place at 28.9%. And then we have the Odyssey, which is down 29.6%. based off of the estimates, but it is close enough to Top Gun Maverick and Wicked that if it overperforms the estimates by several $million even, or a few $million, I could see it taking the number 2 or maybe even the number 1 spot. So the actual numbers are going to have a lot to say about what this top 3 looks like, but still an incredible result considering that we have a lot of $100 million openers, but not all of them hold this well in weekend number 2. For context, just to further frame how well the Odyssey held this past weekend, it had the 57th best opening weekend of all time and the 13th best, according to estimates, second weekend of all time. So really, really unusual in a good way, staying power. And I think a lot of it is that it is a premium experience. It was sold as one, and that's how audiences are viewing it. And the results are showing in the box office. As far as second weekend domestic totals for R-rated films, The Odyssey had the best second weekend performance ever for an R-rated film, behind only Deadpool and Wolverine, and really less than $10 million right now behind Deadpool and Wolverine, healthily above American Sniper, which was its second weekend in wide release. It opened for a few weeks in limited release, so this was American Sniper's second weekend in wide release. It is at number 4. It brought in $60 million in its second weekend. Then we had the first Deadpool at $56.4 million, followed by Joker, The Passion of the Christ, Oppenheimer, Sinners, and Deadpool 2. And when we look at domestic weekends overall for the year, The Odyssey had the 3rd best weekend of the year on its opening weekend and the 5th best weekend of the year domestically in its second weekend. So The Odyssey currently occupying 2 of the top 5 slots as far as all weekends this year and the top grosses. Toy Story 5 is the only other movie right now that currently holds 2 of the best weekends of the year domestically, with the best weekend and the 10th best weekend. Of course, Spider-Man Brand New Day is going to be taking the number 1 spot on the show next week. The Odyssey is now also Christopher Nolan's 5th highest grossing film of all time domestically at $286.3 million. It's less than $10 million away from overtaking Inception. It should probably pass Oppenheimer by the time we do the show next week. And then the question is, how close does it get to The Dark Knight Rises and The Dark Knight? On its current trajectory, it could very well be Christopher Nolan's second $500 million domestic grossing film, but a lot of it is going to come down to how well the movie holds up against Spider-Man Brand New Day. And that takes us to our member poll from last week. I wanted to know what your favorite Christopher Nolan movie was. We had a lot of votes from members here on the channel. Perhaps not a huge surprise, The Dark Knight won with 60 total votes. But the other films surprised me a little bit as far as what order they came in. Oppenheimer came in second with 39 votes, but close behind that was The Prestige with 37 votes, followed by Inception with 33 votes, Interstellar with 24 votes, and Memento with 19 votes. Despite just coming out, The Odyssey was able to come in with 15 votes, ahead of Batman Begins with 10 votes. Tenet, which honestly had a bit of an even stronger presence than I'd anticipated, comes in with 8 votes, ahead of Dunkirk with 5 votes, The Dark Knight Rises with 4 votes, and Insomnia and Following, which each at least had a respectable showing in that no movie got 0 votes. They got 1 vote apiece. The Odyssey is also one of Matt Damon's biggest box office hits of all time. It is now his second highest grossing film domestically, behind Oppenheimer, which currently holds the #1 spot. It's just ahead of The Martian, The Bourne Ultimatum, and Saving Private Ryan. Interstellar, Ocean's 11, The Bourne Supremacy, True Grit, which I had kind of forgotten about, but it did very well when it came out about, 16 years ago now. And Jason Bourne, the kind of, I don't know what you would call that, reboot, legacy sequel, just 4th movie. Anyway, it comes in 10th with $162.4 million. And The Odyssey is also now one of the highest grossing R-rated films, period, of all time domestically. It's just ahead of The Matrix Reloaded and now trails Deadpool 2, It, and Oppenheimer. Once it clears Oppenheimer, it's actually a pretty easy path to get past Joker, American Sniper, Deadpool, and The Passion of the Christ to take #2 on the list. But it's got a lot of work ahead if it wants to beat Deadpool and Wolverine, and I don't think it's going to, because that film is the highest grossing R-rated film of all time domestically at $636.7 million. I forgot just how much money that movie made. So there's been a lot of talk about The Odyssey over the last couple weeks, not just Christopher Nolan's version, but other versions of The Odyssey. And that brings us to our Charts with Dan trivia question for this week. In NBC's 1997 2-part miniseries, I remember watching this when it aired on TV, by the way, of The Odyssey, the adaptation of The Odyssey, what screen legend played Tiresias, the blind prophet of the underworld, who was played by James Remar in Christopher Nolan's film? This is kind of a deep cut. I'd actually forgotten this actor was in the series. But if you are well-versed in the miniseries, then today is your day. If you love the work of Armand Assante, then you may know the answer to this question. Here comes the answer. It's Christopher Lee. He played Tiresias, telling Odysseus what he had to do to return home back in 1997. So we have done a lot of coverage of the phenomenal success of The Odyssey so far. Perhaps we should now look at a movie that is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, and that is Moana. We're now 3 weekends into its release, and that's when I think you can legitimately start looking at the film's profitability and its prospects as far as how much money it's going to make, or in this case, lose at the box office. So this is my profitability estimate for Moana. This is the formula that you've seen here on the show many times. On the left, you can see how I calculate what the movie's net profits are. It's based off of the percentage share coming back from China, internationally, kind of a rotating share based on the weekend that it plays at the box office. The film was budgeted reportedly at $250 million. From what I've read, over 10% of that went to Dwayne Johnson alone. The marketing budget, I haven't really seen any big figures on it. It's at least $100 million based on other movies of its size. It could be more, but let's say $100 million. So that puts the cost of the film to Disney at $350 million. Through this past weekend, it's made $228.1 million globally. Using the formula on the left-hand side, I estimate a net return of $108.9 million against costs of $350 million, which means that the film has not only not made its budget back, but it hasn't come close to making back what was spent to market the film. And I'm estimating the current theatrical loss of Moana at $241 million. Once all is said and done, maybe that could be dropped down to $200 million. But the point of this is that Moana is going to be a big money loser for Disney theatrically. A movie that is not a money loser for Disney is Toy Story 5. It's now the 4th highest grossing Pixar film of all time at $448.5 million. It's about a little less than $40 million behind Finding Dory to take that number 3 spot. When you adjust Pixar grosses for inflation, Toy Story 5 is the 11th highest grossing Pixar film of all time. If it can put in another $22 million or so, it will become the 10th highest grossing. It'll crack that top 10, passing the inflation adjusted gross of The Incredibles at number 10. And then if it can get above $500 million, I'm not sure how high above it's going to. It may not even crack $500 million. That would put it up where Inside Out is currently ranked. Toy Story 5 is currently ranked, though, as the 7th highest grossing animated film of all time domestically. It has passed Toy Story 4 as well as Shrek 2, and it's getting pretty close to Moana 2 and Frozen and Finding Dory. So I think that we're looking at more than likely a top 5 finish for Toy Story 5 as far as all-time animated films domestically. Also, I mentioned Obsession's 11th week in the top 10 was a notable number. That's because it breaks the tie with Project Hail Mary, and Obsession has now spent more weeks in the domestic top 10 than any other 2026 release. This little micro-budget indie has spent more weeks in the top 10 than superhero films, a Star Wars movie, a Michael Jackson biopic. It's just constantly incredible to think about how well Obsession has done. So the second weekend box office of the Odyssey is behind us, and we turn our attention now to Spider-Man Brand New Day and what it might do in its opening weekend, and it takes us to our member poll question for this week. With Spider-Man Brand New Day opening this weekend, do you think that it will have a bigger domestic opening than Spider-Man No Way Home, which opened at $260.1 million? That would be at the higher end of expectations, but there are some forecasts that say that this movie could very well surprise a lot of people, given the pre-release tracking and all of that stuff. So do you think it's going to be bigger than the last Spider-Man film? You can vote yes or no right now in the member poll on the YouTube channel page, and I will reveal the results and whether you predicted correctly on next week's show. Let's turn our attention now away from the domestic box office and take a look at the top films internationally. Those are markets outside of the US and Canada. These are the top 5 international films, and leading the way was The Odyssey, which dropped just 8.1% in its second weekend internationally, so a better hold even than we saw domestically, to bring in $128.3 million. In second place is a film that was released in China called All Wishes Come True, which brought in $43.8 million. Right now, it is a Chinese release, but it's actually a co-production between Sony Pictures Animation and the Chinese animation house Pearl Studio. Sony is going to release this film with an English dub here in the States on September 18th, and the American version is directed by Joaquim Dos Santos, who is one of the credited co-directors for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So we may well see this movie on Charts with Dan for an American release in a little under 2 months. In third place is Stephen Chow's film Kung Fu Soccer, which made another $32.1 million. Then Toy Story 5, which brought in another $24.7 million, and Minions and Monsters, which brought in $18.6 million internationally. When you take those international numbers and you combine them with our domestic numbers, we get the top 10 movies worldwide. And of course, The Odyssey was number 1 with another $215.3 million just over this second 3-day weekend. That's overall an 18.2% drop for the film from its opening. It's already at $639.6 million globally. It looks like it is rocketing towards $1 billion. In second place is All Wishes Come True at $43.8 million. It actually has been open in China for a little while, and it's over $100 million there. So that's why the total down there at the bottom is so much bigger than the weekend total. Toy Story 5 dropped just 20% globally to bring in another $34.7 million, and it has now become the third billion-dollar grossing film of the year. We'll see where it ranks among all worldwide releases in just a couple minutes. But we now have 3 films in 2026 that have eclipsed $1 billion. Of course, Toy Story 5 joins Michael and the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Kung Fu Soccer was overall 4th in the world at $32.1 million. Minions and Monsters dropped 32% to bring in $28.2 million. It's now broken the $400 million global barrier. In 6th place was Moana, which brought in $26.9 million. In 7th place, we have Jana Nayagan, which brought in $14.3 million globally. It is a Tamil language film from India. In 8th place was Obsession. It actually saw a 27.9% increase worldwide over this past weekend. with $11 million and a $458.3 million global total. Hadestown the Musical, just off of its domestic release, comes in ninth at $9.6 million, and Hope dropped 55.3% in its South Korean release to bring in $7.2 million. Looking at worldwide weekends overall, last weekend's opening of the Odyssey was the third best weekend of the year worldwide. The Odyssey's second weekend was the sixth best weekend we've seen for any movie worldwide in 2026. It's actually the best non-opening weekend performance we've seen for a film this year. The top five are all opening weekends, and we will see where Spider-Man Brand New Day ranks. I think it is very likely, almost certain, to be number one on this chart and on the overall global worldwide opening weekend chart next week. The Odyssey is Christopher Nolan's sixth highest grossing film of all time already worldwide at $639.6 million. It has passed the global totals of Dunkirk, Tenet, Batman Begins, and Insomnia. It's heading toward Interstellar and Inception, as well as Oppenheimer. And if it does break $1 billion, then it will become Christopher Nolan's third $1 billion film and his only $1 billion movie to not star Batman. And looking at R-rated films worldwide, The Odyssey is now the 10th highest grossing R-rated film of all time at $639.6 million. It's very close behind China's Detective Chinatown 3. It's getting close to the global total of It at $719.7 million. Deadpool and The Matrix Reloaded are at numbers 6 and 7, and then the top 5 is Deadpool 2, Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, Oppenheimer, Joker, and Deadpool and Wolverine. Should The Odyssey break $1 billion, it will be only the third R-rated film to do so, joining the top two there, which are Deadpool and Wolverine and Joker, and it obviously would be the first non-superhero or comic book film to break $1 billion and carry an R rating. Toy Story 5 is the sixth Pixar film to break $1 billion at the worldwide box office. It's currently the sixth highest grossing movie ever released by the studio, but it's only a few $1 million behind Finding Dory, so it'll soon be there at the number 5 spot. And it's actually very doable for it to get all the way up to number 3, which is currently occupied by Toy Story 4. So Toy Story 5, a $6 billion hit in Pixar's long box office history. So that's everything going on at the worldwide box office. Let's turn back to the domestic box office and take a look at what I call our specialty charts. And we will start with the per theater averages from this past weekend. At number 1 is a documentary called Jack Johnson Surf Film Music. It's a combination of surf film and music, which made $28,000. Now, I think it's because he is taking this film about himself kind of on tour with him to live events. So we may see this pop up on the specialty charts again over the next several weeks. The Odyssey had the second best per theater average of the weekend. Not a shocker, considering that it is selling out a lot of premium auditoriums. It brought in $22,000 on average in each of its 3,942 theaters. Sheep in the Box comes in third place. It played in 3 theaters and brought in an average of $11,000 per theater. It's the latest from Japanese writer-director Hirokazu Kurita, and the movie debuted at Cannes. It's a movie about a couple who adopt a robot child, and it is now making its way into the specialty theater market here in the United States. In fourth place is A Sad and Beautiful World, which played in just 1 theater and brought in over $9,000 in that theater. The film is from Lebanese director Cyril Aris, and it's about a couple deciding whether or not to flee Lebanon. And in fifth place was Hadestown the Musical. It played in 1,949 theaters, but it brought in a very healthy $4,973 per theater. So it looks like the release strategy on this film was pretty good. It was in a good number of theaters, and it turned out a lot of people to those theaters. These are the top films in limited release for this past weekend. At number 1 was Jana Nayagan, which was in 425 theaters and brought in a total of $730,000. In second place was the latest film from Nicholas Winding Refn, Her Private Hell. It played in 675 theaters, but there was not a lot of interest from moviegoers to see the film. It brought in $530,000 total, and the per theater average wasn't fantastic. It was about $765 per theater. In third place was Chennai Love Story, playing in 341 theaters. It brought in just over $400,000. At number 4 is the film Pinocchio Unstrung, which brought in just under $400,000 in 500 theaters. Pinocchio Unstrung is the latest from writer-director Rhys Frake Waterfield, who brought us both Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and its sequel, and I wouldn't go near it with a 10-foot pole. And in fifth place is Bad Counselors, which played in 678 theaters and brought in just over $330,000. This is what the 2026 annual domestic box office looks like. The major change here is that the Odyssey jumps onto the list at number 5. It's now the 5th highest grossing film of the year domestically, behind Project Hail Mary, Michael, the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and Toy Story 5. Obsession, The Devil Wears Prada 2, Backrooms, The Mandalorian and Grogu, and Hoppers are numbers 6 through 10. And after just 1 week on this chart, Minions and Monsters drops off. It's eliminated by the Odyssey, and Hoppers will probably be knocked out by Spider-Man Brand New Day. These are the top 10 films of the year worldwide, and we have a new number 1. In addition to breaking $1 billion, Toy Story 5 is now the overall top grossing film of the year at $1,022 million. That's a little bit better than the Super Mario Galaxy movie and Michael, which are also just over $1 billion. Now, should the Odyssey break $1 billion and Spider-Man Brand New Day also break $1 billion, both of which seem like very real possibilities, this will be the first year since 2019 where we will have 5 or more billion-dollar films at the worldwide box office. There were 9 back in 2019, 7 of them from Disney, plus Spider-Man Far From Home and Joker. Pegasus 3 is in 6th place. The Odyssey jumps onto the list at number 7 at $639.6 million. Obsession gets bumped down to number 8. Minions and Monsters, which I actually should have added to this list last week, but it was just an oversight on my part, is on the list at number 9 at $411.8 million. That knocks Backrooms down to number 10. Hoppers and Star Wars, The Mandalorian and Grogu, drop off of the overall worldwide box office for the year. And finally, let's take a look at a feature I added to the show last week, the highest grossing actors of the year at the domestic box office. Now, to qualify, you have to play a credited named role in a film. And we have a change at number 1. Benny Safdie, due to the continuing excellent performance of the Odyssey, is now the highest grossing actor of 2026 domestically because he voiced a character in the Super Mario Galaxy movie and, of course, played Agamemnon in the Odyssey. Those 2 roles alone have brought in a combined domestic box office of $716.1 million, and he takes over the number 1 spot from Melissa Villaseñor, who was at number 1 last week due to her voice roles in both Hoppers and Toy Story 5. Last week, a lot of people were asking where Anne Hathaway was in the top 10. Well, she was just outside the top 10, but because the Odyssey did so well this past weekend, she jumps all the way now to number 3 on the list. She's already brought in over $500 million in domestic box office with her film. She has another one later this summer with The End of Oak Street. She was, of course, in The Devil Wears Prada 2, The Odyssey, and Mother Mary, which helps to kind of push her just over the top here. So she's currently the 3rd highest grossing actor of the year domestically. Coleman Domingo and Dion Cole both dropped down 1 spot. Chris Pratt is at number 6. He's also down 1 spot. The cast of Toy Story 5, the ones that aren't separated already because they were in other films, is at number 7. Glenn Powell actually dropped 2 spots from where he was last week. The Super Mario Galaxy cast is down 1 spot, and Meryl Streep is down 1 spot to number 10. And it probably goes without saying that this chart will see some drastic changes next week because Zendaya, Jon Bernthal, and Tom Holland will make an appearance in Spider-Man Brand New Day. All 3 of them are also in the Odyssey, so all 3 of them should be in very high positions on this chart. So that's what's going on at the box office. Let's take a look now at the world of streaming, and we'll start with the latest numbers from Netflix. These cover the week of July 13th through the 19th. New ones will be released later today. And the number 1 program on Netflix, is another kind of low ratings week for Netflix, is a movie called Desire. It brought in 12.86 million views. It's a Spanish language thriller about a mother and daughter who both fall for the same man. I think he's like a swimming coach or something. Yeah, all right, sure. Agent Kim Reactivated is in 2nd place at just over 11 million views. Close behind is the Netflix documentary Shipwrecked: Nightmare at Sea. Little House on the Prairie Season 1 is in 4th place with 9.8 million total views, followed by I Will Find You at 8.84 million views, and the Netflix movie Nothing to Lose at number 6 with 6.88 million views. Ika is at number 7. It is an Indian film about a prosecutor forced to defend a man that he previously sent to prison. Then we have Voicemails for Isabel at number 8. At number 9 is The East Palace, which brought in 4.85 million views. It is a South Korean series about a palace that's infested by ghosts. And rounding out the top 10 is The Hawk. It's a high-profile original series starring Will Ferrell, but it only managed to bring in 4.8 million views. We'll see what it does on the next chart, where we'll see numbers for a full week of viewership. Let's look now at the latest numbers from Nielsen. Now, these are domestic numbers only, unlike the global numbers we just saw from Netflix, and they're delayed by about a week because that's how Nielsen just likes to run their house. Let's look first at the 10 most watched streaming movies for June 22nd through the 28th. That was the week that Avatar: Fire and Ash debuted on Disney+, and it was the most streamed movie domestically at 16.8 million hours watched. Voicemails for Isabel on Netflix comes in second at 12.4 million hours watched. Then we had the debut of The Sheep Detectives on Amazon Prime Video. After its successful theatrical run, it also had a good launch on streaming at 10.6 million hours watched. This is where I think you should focus as a studio on the theatrical streaming hybrid because it seems to have worked really well for The Sheep Detectives. Little Brother on Netflix debuts in fourth place at 9.9 million hours watched, followed by Maternal Instinct at number 5, Hoppers at number 6, Superman returning to the top 10. This is around the time of the release of Supergirl, so I think some people might have been going to HBO Max to revisit last summer's movie. Just over 4 million hours watched for Superman. At number 5 is 5 Pounds of Pressure with 3.1 million hours watched. It is a 2024 film starring Luke Evans that did not receive a domestic theatrical release. But we see movies like this pop up on the charts all the time. Then at number 9, we have Toy Story on Disney+. And last week, I was very upset that Toy Story 2 was the only Toy Story movie not in the top 10. Well, it made the top 10 this week at 2.85 million hours watched. These were the most watched streaming shows for the week of June 22nd through the 28th. At number 1 was I Will Find You. This was its first full week on Netflix, and it put up a huge number at 41.4 million hours watched. Love Island USA also putting up huge numbers at 32.7 million hours watched. The Last Ship is at number 3. Now, this is not a news show. It aired from 2014 to 2018 on TNT. It starred Eric Dane, who passed away earlier this year, and it's about a pandemic that wipes out most of the people on Earth, so maybe people just needed some time to process that. But it brought in just over 20 million hours watched, so the third most watched streaming show, despite having been canceled about 8 years ago. Avatar: The Last Airbender returned for a second season, and it ranks number 4 on the chart at 17.75 million hours watched. This covers watch time for both the first and second season of the show. Bluey's at number 5 on Disney+, followed by House of the Dragon on HBO Max. The Big Bang Theory, also on HBO Max. They actually tied as far as hours watched. Grey's Anatomy's at number 8, Dutton Ranch is at number 9, and SpongeBob SquarePants is at number 10. And I Will Find You put up the 5th best performance for any series on streaming this year, according to Nielsen's ratings, with its 41.4 million hours watched. That comes in behind the debut of The Lincoln Lawyer's latest season back in February, which brought in 42.3 million hours. It also comes in behind the debuts of both parts 1 and 2 of the latest season of Bridgerton and the finale week of Stranger Things, which brought in 53.35 million hours viewed. And these were the top streaming shows as far as watch time per available episode. So you take the total watch time for a show, divide it by how many episodes of the show you can watch, and that's how you get this number. I Will Find You comes in at a dominant number 1 at 5.18 million hours of watch time per episode. Dutton Ranch comes in a distant second at 1.51 million hours of watch time per episode. Avatar: The Last Airbender was able to crack 1 million hours watched per episode. Again, that's for all 15 of the episodes from season 1 and 2. House of the Dragon bringing in 775,000 hours of watch time per episode, followed by Ms. Rachel at number 5. The Last Ship ranks at number 6. The Polygamist is at number 7 with 362,000 hours per episode. The Dallas Cowboy cheerleader reality show America's Sweethearts comes in at number 8, followed by The Agency at number 9. And rounding out the top 10 is The Bear, which returned for its final season. It brought in just over 200,000 hours of watch time per episode for each of its 46 episodes. And looking overall at the best watch time per episode performances of the year, I Will Find You put up the 4th best number we've seen at 5.18 million hours per episode. That comes in ahead of Dutton Ranch back on the week of May 18th, which drew over 4 million hours per episode. But it comes in behind Reality Check, Inside America's Next Top Model, the first week of Dutton Ranch, which brought in over 6 million hours of watch time per episode, and the first full week of His and Hers on Netflix, which still is at number 1 at 6.23 million hours of watch time per episode back in January. And that's everything I've got for you this week. Before we go, though, I just wanted to point out a few things you might be interested in watching, both in theaters and at home. On Tuesday, Supergirl hits digital release, so you can either buy the film or watch it via premium video on demand. So a theatrical window of about a month for Supergirl, but I think it's run its box office course. On Wednesday, The Devil Wears Prada 2 will debut on Disney+. Then on Thursday, you can catch the Super Mario Galaxy movie on Peacock. Friday, of course, Spider-Man Brand New Day hits theaters. I'm actually on the road right now to go see it, and you will get my review tomorrow morning when the review embargo lifts. Also on Friday, if you're not feeling in a Marvel kind of mood, Batman Caped Crusader Season 2 premieres on Amazon Prime. You can watch all 10 episodes of the second season. And if you just can't get enough of Robert Pattinson and Zendaya in the Odyssey, you can check out The Drama, which I enjoyed and came out earlier this year. It makes its debut on HBO Max this Friday. Also hitting some theaters this weekend is the latest film from director Greg Araki, I Want Your Sex, which stars Cooper Hoffman and Olivia Wilde, who currently has a movie of her own in theaters, in The Invite. This premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and was actually such a hot ticket, I didn't get a chance to see it. So I've heard good things about the film. I haven't seen it, but I hope to get a chance to see it at some point in the future. And Boyhood will also be getting a re-release in some theaters this upcoming weekend. As Red Letter Media has imprinted on everyone's mind, it took 12 years to make that film. Well, it's been 12 years since that film was released, believe it or not. I actually really enjoy Boyhood, but I don't know if I'm going to have the time to see it if it plays anywhere near me, because this is going to be a busy week here on the channel. Of course, we've got charts today. I'll have my Spider-Man review tomorrow. There will likely be a spoiler review for Spider-Man Brand New Day later this week. And I've also been working on a very research-intense video about the Odyssey, which you should see later this week. So even though my programming schedule was light last week, I should be able to actually make up for it this week. So if you want to see those videos and anything else that might pop up, be sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit that bell so you're notified when I upload a new video. But most of all, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.